Hello and welcome to another edition of Politics is Life. My name is Yetunde Makinde. Today, I'm discussing Nigeria's population. In recent times, I've heard many Nigerians argue um, that we're overpopulated, and this overpopulation contributes to the underdevelopment in the country. I disagree with this posit. So what I'll be doing is use empirical statistics to argue my position, to argue my point. And this content is titled Debunking the Fallacy of Population Explosion in Nigeria and by extension on the African continent. The notion or the idea that Africa is overpopulated is one that emanates from the West, and it's unfortunate that many people, Nigerians, Africans, buy into this rhetoric without making the effort to actually check the veracity of the bandwagon they're jumping on. For some reason, Africans tend to think that every position that the West takes over issues, be it politics or economics, that it's always correct, because after all, the West is all-knowing. So let me even yield that that there is a population explosion in Nigeria or in Africa. I don't know if those who believe this rhetoric are aware that the global north is experiencing an underpopulation. If we admit that overpopulation is a problem, we must be open to admitting that the inverse, which is an underpopulation, is equally a problem, a challenge. I've also found that many of those who buy into this overpopulation rhetoric also naively think that the West, because every country in the West, Western Europe, has an immigration policy, and many of these naive people somehow think that this position is something that is motivated by compassion. The immigration policy of North America and Western Europe is a calculated economic move. The immigration policies is calculated, it's deliberate, poaching highly skilled people from supposedly overpopulated part of the world is not a mistake. It's a design, it's deliberate, it's a deliberate ploy. Like I said, I've yielded to the overpopulation rhetoric. So now, if the global south is overpopulated and the global north is suffering an underpopulation, doesn't that even things out? I mean, the global north has an immigration policy that allows an influx of economic migrant into their countries, which is done purely to sustain the machinery of economy, because you need people to sustain production, and you need people for consumption. Without human capital, you couldn't sustain your economic machinery. So if the West benefits so much from the so-called overpopulation, why does the West have a need to constantly harp on about how Africa and Asia are overpopulated? If you're benefiting from it, and then you're benefiting from it, and you have an underpopulation challenge, why go on lamenting and constantly beating down Africans and telling them how to go about the business of having children? Sometimes you'll hear the West argue that Africa's population is contributing negatively to climatic change. But this is not correct. The people who are naive can buy that, but if you're logical, you know that's a false narrative. Because if you look at the carbon footprint index, Africa's score is negligible, and it's apparent why. Because we're not productive, we're not industrialized, we are an import dependent continent. We don't produce our own consumption. I mean, we all largely work for other countries, work for China and the other places where we import from. All the work that we do here is to pay producers in all these places. Again, Africa's carbon footprint is negligible, and it's clear why, because we're not productive. So the rhetoric about population, what contributes the most to climatic changes is carbon emission, not necessarily people. It's carbon emission. So now, let me now pick the first data that I want to use to argue out my point, to support my argument, to support my posit, which is median age. Let's look at the median age. The median age is the middle age of a country. Nigeria's median age is 19.4. Niger at 14.8 years, as the lowest in the world. As a matter of fact, all the countries with median age 20 and below are on the African continent and in Asia. And the lower the median age, the safer it is, or the better it is for a country. Now let's flip the coin and look at the median age for countries in the global north, that in the West and other developed countries. Japan has a median age of 48, Germany 47, Monaco has the highest at 55. What this implies or suggests is that the women in those places are not reproducing enough. They're reproducing at a very slow rate. So the population growth rate is very low. I'm trying to collect my thought. So the median age, the lower it is, the better for you. So the countries in the West has the highest median age. So we have a healthy median age, which is good for us. So now let me move on to, so as far as I know, the idea that we're overpopulated is, I don't know, should I just narrow it and put it down to propaganda? I don't know, you decide. Let the audience, let the listening or watching audience decide. So now let me move on to the next data that I'm using, which is EGR, economic growth rate. Contrasting it with population growth rate. Nigeria's EGR is 2.4%. Our population growth rate is 2.6. And this ratio is not healthy, because what this suggests, or the implication of this, is that our number is growing faster than the economy is at 2.4, where actually the economy is growing at snail pace. But let me contrive that scenario to an individual level or a personal level. What's basically going on in Nigeria is that it's like a man who has 4 children or 10 children or a dozen children, who is not able to feed his children, but he has an arable land. He has a land that he can till, but he's refused to do this. If he would till the land, then his children will be able to feed to their fill. So are we to say to such a man that he shouldn't have had children, or we should tell him to till the land which is an asset to him? What do you think should happen? Because what's basically going on is Nigerians are not productive like they should be. The problem with Nigeria is not that there are too many of us, it's just that the many of us are not productive enough. So what should be done to improve our EGR? This is a question I'm putting out to the listening audience or the watching audience. What do you advise? What would you advise Nigeria to do? Or if this was a person, like the analogy that I painted, what would you advise that person to do? You will tell them to get off their ass, to stop being lazy until they land. That's exactly what Nigeria should do. Become a productive nation. Jack up our productivity exponentially. You can't fault a man for having children. Especially, you can't fault a man for having children if the opportunity to feed them are there, but you're not just taking those opportunities. To make this make sense, let's look at Rwanda. Rwanda has an EGR of 8.4% and a population growth rate of 2.5. That's a notch lower than Nigeria's, and then Rwanda has a population of 12 million people. So how is it Rwanda, a low-income country, has an economy that is growing at 3 times the pace of that of Nigeria? What's the difference between Rwanda and Nigeria? More or less is what I'm asking. I'm sure you know. Leadership. It's leadership that sets the two countries apart. Rwanda has a leadership class. Note that I didn't say Rwanda as a leader. It's a collective. Rwanda has a leadership class that is vested in infrastructural development. A leadership class that is vested in the well-being of its citizens and its inhabitants. Infrastructural development drives productivity. Productivity is one of the parameters you use to measure economic growth. So if Rwanda, that is a low-income country, Nigeria is a medium-income country, if Rwanda is able to grow economy at that pace, Rwanda that has 12 million population, if I use the modest figure of 120 million population, that means we're 10 times the size of Rwanda. So can you picture the size of the Nigerian economy if we put our labor force to productive use? 2017 MBS statistics says that there are 8 million. I beg your pardon. Because so what this is even saying is that Rwanda with a 12 million population actually has like a labor force of about half that figure. Say 6 million. And 6 million people are able to achieve 8.4 EGR. So can you picture what 111 million strong labor force can do? The growth will be exponential in the short to medium term. But of course, it can't be done without an outstanding leadership class. So all I'm saying is this: our number is an asset and not a liability. As a matter of fact, the only reason why Nigeria hasn't gone the way of Venezuela and Sri Lanka, besides our ability to service our debt, is our sheer number. Venezuela, 5 million. That's all the population, 5 million. Sri Lanka, 12 million. So the only thing that has sustained this country is our sheer number. Why? Because people, in spite of the fact that government is irresponsible, individuals, people, groups will continue to do what they need to do to survive, to live. Farm food, farm land, buy food, clothe ourselves, shelter ourselves, build houses. We continue to grind the machinery of our economy. If we were smaller in number, it's likely we will have gone the way of Venezuela. Because there are more of us, tax revenue is larger. So the whole point of this is to say to those who believe that fallacy that our number is contributing to our underdevelopment or that it's a liability. That's a false narrative. There's no truth in it, at least when you look at it through the lens of statistics and reality. Let's paint a picture. If Africa were to suddenly become prosperous to the point where Africans do not need to leave the continent anymore, if they do, it would be for adventure. It would be for adventure. It would be for adventurous purposes. What do you imagine would happen in the global north, considering the fact that they're not, if they've reached the fertility rate is dropped to the point that they can't, it's become difficult for them to replace the aged with younger generation. What do you think would happen in the global north? I don't have to, you know, at least if you're not naive. So the point is, it's never really a good idea to jump on any bandwagon. Why? I understand that humans are creatures of emotion, that people just like to parrot what other people say without checking the veracity of it. But I mean, this is the 21st century, and then for adults, it just doesn't make any sense for you to hear something and begin to parrot it. Make the effort to, to check that what you're saying, what you're repeating is factually correct. But some people don't mind embarrassing themselves, so they'll say just about anything. So this is all I've got for today. If you found value in what I've shared and you did like to support my team and I, please like, share, and you can also leave us a comment to make us really happy at LTM. What you can do is to consider making a purchase of my book titled Who Can or Will Save Nigeria, Anti-Brigade of Technocrats. The links to where you can make a purchase of both the e-copy and the print version are in the description box below. Until I come your way next time, it's Yetunde Olokun saying, Ireo.